Okay, thank you for coming and visiting this great session about AI. I mean, today we will not talk about AI in general or about AI apocalypse, but but we will talk about AI safety and governance and how we deploy AI currently in our society. So I will introduce myself. I'm Anna from Docentric. This is my name over there. And I'm, yeah? Closer. I am CEO at Docentric and also solution architect. It doesn't matter. I have a lot of copilots in the first row.
No, nobody's perfect.
Copilots. Co-pilots. This is my co-pilots, okay? And then now I would love to you introduce yourself and tell us a bit how you are connected to the AI field.
Oh, I was not preparing for that, for the introduction, but in general, I'm a psychologist by my initial education, doing now PhD in the digital economics and holding few functions. I'm the co-founder of Global AI Ethics Institute and currently in the International Project Management Association, they are head of AI Special Interest Group. And I'm doing a lot of researches and trying to do some papers that are connecting influence of the AI technology on the society, right, and the economics. So I'm not a tech guy, as many people present here are, but I'm doing some interesting projects that are aiming to bring artificial intelligence closer to the general public and to the people in business. So I established AI Art Singularity, the first exhibition of AI-generated pictures, and AI Business Hackathon that is aiming for, again, business people to start using AI as a tool. And I will stop there.
Yeah, so many achievements. Yeah. Let's get applause. So now, Ilya, you have a hard job.
Yeah. So first of all,
that's
not fair to follow up such an introduction. But yeah, Ilya Fainberg. I'm a senior program manager at Microsoft. I'm part of the Power Platform product group. I work with customers, kind of our largest customers in the world for Power Platform. And kind of my job is to look for opportunities in the real world of how we can apply AI in business applications, kind of in the real world right now, what the use cases, and how we can use that information to evolve our products, evolve our offerings, and evolve our solutions at Microsoft so that they are doing a better job serving you and our customers.
Okay, we can also get applause for Ilya, okay, and Dona.
And Ilya's dang good at what he does, just so you know. I'm Dona Sarkar. I lead a, hi.
Wow. You're the most popular here.
Oh my. I lead a AI and extensibility, AI and Copilot extensibility program at Microsoft. What that means is I go around, talk to customers about how they're using AI and Copilots. And if it's not working for them because it's hard, I go yell at the product teams a lot. That's my job. The product team that I work with and pair up with the most is the CTO's office. It's called Octo, and we look after all 4,000 products at Microsoft. That's why when I'm up in the business of all of the products that you all are in, and one of the things that I found is that just AI usability is kind of variable across different industries and sectors and such. So I'm very interested to see what these people have to say, because I am not an expert on AI ethics under any circumstances.
Okay. Big applause.
Yeah, and my name is Rajko Muršič, coming from Slovenia. I'm anthropologist by profession, so maybe sooner or later you will become my, how to say it, subjects in research. You never know. I'm only half joking. So my relation to artificial intelligence is completely out of frame. The only relation I have to these issues is I am a member of a research team studying, let's say, automatic decision-making, ethical issues in programming, and this kind of stuff with a Finnish group. And but I used to have some experience in in computing very, very long time ago, 1981, I have to admit. I don't know if there is anybody who is old enough to remember program languages like Fortran and Pascal. I did a couple of programs in those languages, so I'm not completely unfamiliar with it. But otherwise, occasionally I'm a musician. My expertise is mostly in music or music related, and somehow in anthropology I'm still quite curious to understand some important stuff as far as I understand about humanity.
Okay. Okay, so we will see now from different perspectives topics we are going to process. And the first topic I have for you is positive outcomes and why we are so excited about that. So I would like to ask Dona, because she is the most cheerful person I know, to elaborate some positive outcomes we can expect in the near future.
Okay, so positive outcomes from AI across society. So there are three that are very, very interesting to me right now, and I think you all will resonate. One of them is education for people from less privileged backgrounds. Suddenly, AI is able to put us who have access to technology in a more level playing field. Like recently we announced that thing with Khan Academy to kind of democratize tech education for people. So now if someone like me, I didn't learn to code till I was 18 years old. When I went to college, everybody there in my first computer science class had been coding since they were 9, 10, 11 years old. I did not have a computer in my house. The first computer I ever had was at the computer lab. So for me, I felt very behind in my first year, and I almost dropped out of computer science many, many, many times. But with something like AI, you can actually get skilled up on anything, not just computer science, from a very young age. On the corollary, AI is mostly just available online. And that's why I believe offline access to models and things like that, which you can do through Hacky Solutions, is really, really important to keep that digital divide from growing wider. So one is education. The second one is medical. And medical is really interesting because we're always going to need doctors. But doctors are overworked, overwhelmed, and there's now less people graduating medical school than there ever has been in the history of the world. So it's so bad that we're not, in the US, we're not letting doctors retire at the age of 70, 80, 90 years old. We're making them come into work 1 or 2 days a week. So one area that we are seeing is that doctors are able to use AI tools that are specifically trained on things like X-rays and DNA to be able to say, like, this person, you know, they are more likely to get cancer than this person because that's DNA trends. Or this X-ray shows this thing. So using it as a doctor's assistant that they can get answers from very quickly versus digging through medical journals has been a thing that we've really seen. The people who worked on viruses are able to detect new emergence of viruses. And I learned that at the World Health Forum last month. And the third one is more equitable access to legal help. Because sometimes people just do not have access to what they're, just the legal trouble, right? People from less privileged backgrounds are not going to be able to hire a lawyer for $400 an hour to give them legal counsel on things. So they're able to use AI to do the first conversation. So the second conversation they go in with knowledge over their rights in their own country or on a very specific case. So those are the three areas I'm seeing, like actual scientifically proven benefits that could not have existed without AI.
Okay, great answer. And I think that Aco want to add something, right?
Yeah, I just crossed my mind because when I'm asked similar question, I give very similar answer because the three areas of studying that I really like the most in AI are health, education, and then military. But legal is also not bad. But just to put what Dona said into context, how it is important, what is AI going to allow us or already allowing us? It's the democratization of education. Theoretically, it comes with one risk, right? But just to picture it a little bit for you, because I think that it's not very familiar fact for most of the people, but currently around the world we have like 400 million children that don't have access to basic education of their language and math. So we are speaking about hundreds of millions of people who now can get certain education, or even like fantastic education, because it will be personalized to them, which is enormous advantage, right? On the other hand, what is the data that could a little bit compromise the first fact is unfortunately the digital divide, right? So when you're looking at the research that is showing us how much access to the internet, which was mentioned by Dona also, is available to people, you have some rough estimation that 34% of people globally don't have access to the internet, which was, I was shocked by that. But when you split that number, then you have developed countries and undeveloped countries. Inside of the undeveloped countries, you have 64% people who don't have access to the internet, which is completely unimaginable for us sitting here in Europe, right? And then when you're looking per country to again put the number behind it, it means that, for example, in India you have something like 700 million people without access to the internet, and then without potential positive effects of artificial intelligence. So just take that under consideration.
Okay, this is a lot of goods, a lot of upsides, right? But let's now ask Professor Aco a question, because I found this on the internet like a myth. A lot of people are saying that AI is going to have mostly positive outcomes. Is this true? And why they think so?
Well, in humanities, we always know that you can't judge evening before the day is over. We have to wait, and people always use technologies in different way than expected. And all technology we have is tested by people's use, and I don't believe we can be so much optimistic exactly in these fields for which artificial intelligence is designed at the moment. I think people will use it pretty much different way when it comes to usability in daily life.
Not just for education.
Definitely not, because education is a especially specific issue. It is not a matter of, let's say, access to internet. It is a matter of access to teachers. And teachers, artificial intelligence will never replace teachers. Because in teaching, you have a kind of activity which is called transference in psychoanalytics, which means a student always establish emotional contact to the teacher, which is a love and hate relationship, basically. You know it, obviously. Artificial intelligence, don't misunderstand my point, will establish love and hate relationship. I mean, all technologies are deeply emotional and affective to human beings. But what I have in mind is effectivity of teaching is impossible without teachers. I mean, real human beings. The same in medicine, but I am really afraid of using artificial intelligence in law. Because law is the only activity of human beings in which we have to establish a kind of certainty. This is very close to certainty you can establish in deductive logic. Practically the only one we have in humanities. This certainty is definitely not something artificial intelligence can define, because human beings are a bit different. So in law and in all occasions Dona was speaking about, we have to understand class position, class positioning inequalities we are facing in our societies, which cannot be solved by technology solely. It is always human-based.
Okay, actually, I wanted just to quote Mustafa Suleyman, who joined Microsoft as CEO at Microsoft AI New Division. Also, Microsoft acquired Inflection AI, right? And model rights to use the model, personal intelligence in your pocket. And he actually said, which was very, I don't know, intriguing for me, that when we start using these kind of models which developed empathy, we will be more productive, more creative, and more empathetic. What do you think about that?
Is it again a question for me?
I don't know. you can continue, maybe. Yeah. But also I wanted to ask Ilya, because he told me that ChatGPT is only a tool. So is it only a tool? And if AI will turn out bad only if they're abusers of AI. So you already said to me,
Yeah.
so you can repeat in front of everyone.
Yeah. The way AI is built right now, and if you really kind of understand the technology behind it, how it's built, it is often compared to intelligence, to human intelligence. You would often see like materials saying, oh, you know, GPT-3 is as smart as a 5-year-old, and GPT-4 is as smart as a 10-year-old, and so on and so on. That's not the case. Like I have a 10-year-old son, you know, he maybe not the smartest kid in the world, but he's smarter than GPT-4. At least he's more capable. You know, he can jump, he can play football and so on and so on. GPT-4 cannot do that, even if we put it in an actual robot, right? So it has not intelligence, but capability to make sense of huge amounts of data. That's kind of the main thing that modern current AI brings to the table. It allows you to generate new information based on existing information. It's not a creative process, right? It's just something that it creates something that is compiled from existing information, right? And it allows you to find information easily, right? So we're talking about access.
Sorry,
access
but
to
I heard from Mustafa Suleyman that this technology can now create their own ideas and also make decisions on their own. And we heard from Dona on the keynote that there is autonomous agents which will act in an autonomous way. So what about that?
So we can use AI to make certain decisions, right? But the question is, how do we apply AI, right? And we need to apply it in a responsible way, in such a way that whenever there are critical decisions that affect people's lives, that affect real people or affect real circumstances, as it was mentioned, for example, in the legal department, right? We don't want to have an AI to be the judge that gives you the sentence. We want AI to be the tool that gives the judge all the information about all the precedents, about the law, about everything that he needs to do to make the right decision with the least bias possible and the most information available, right? That's the whole point. The point is not to create some intelligence that replaces us. It's the point is to create an assistant that helps us to do less of the menial job that we sometimes have to do, and have more time and more capability of being creative. Yes, AI can create stuff technically, right?
Amazing stuff.
Yes, it can create amazing stuff. Let me give you an example of when we can use AI that is creative to enhance our creativity and help us do our job better. We're talking about examples of how AI can help different kinds of sectors like legal, like education and so on. Another thing that AI can do is help businesses scale. Every small business right now, or let's take a business, I don't know, 30 years ago, before e-commerce. A business 30 years ago, you would have a bakery, you will open a bakery, it would be that bakery on the same street corner for the rest of your life, and you have no ability to scale it. Now, with e-commerce, you can scale it infinitely. You can make a franchise out of a small bakery in a year. What you can do with AI. With AI, you can use it to generate content. You can use it to generate images. You can use it to enhance the e-commerce experience that customers have in that bakery. If you have a small micro brand where you create new fashion, unless you have right now the ability to hire models for $10,000 an hour to model that fashion for you on stage or whatever, you're limited by how much you can scale, right? Or you can use AI to create the models that wear the clothes that you have designed and be able to show that off and sell it and scale your business more easily. So it's not to say that AI can be creative and therefore it replaces humans. No, AI can do things that can help us scale what we do best.
But this is not what Mustafa Suleyman said. He said that in 5 years there will be a new Turing test, and this test will be like that AI agent will found its own company. It will create a product, research the market, negotiate the prices, and be successful. I mean, this is pretty much scary, if you ask me. And also, this is what you talked about. A lot of engineers who created social media also said they are just doing maximizing things for greater engagement, and where we are now, I mean, with social media. So it's not like it's not everything like you said, I think.
So what I said is how AI is right now, what it can do right now. You know, what AI will be able to do in 5 years or 10 years, I don't know. I'm not in the marketing department. I'm not going to tell you what it's going to do, right? I'm an architect. I'm telling you what it can do now and what you can use it for now. You know, like 10 years ago, we would think that fusion power is just 10 years away, and it is still 10 years away. So I don't know. Maybe we'll have Skynet. Maybe we'll have the Matrix in 10 years. I don't know. I know that it's not here right now, and I know that from what I know of how the technology is built, and I started out my career as a developer, as a deeply technical person, I can tell you that we're not there yet.
Yeah, and I said to you earlier that this is called shortism. Yeah, okay. Shortism, when you look very shortly what will happen. So Aco, you a candidate for the next...
Yeah, I mean, you will probably find the experts on the both sides of the dialogue, right?
Yeah.
Mustafa Suleyman may say one thing, Jan LeCun can say or hint on something else. It doesn't matter. Nobody's completely sure. I agree with what Ilya said, but for the sake of the discussion, I could understand somebody saying, look, I would like AI to be my judge because it is going to be less biased and it's going to be more just than many people that we see in our justice system. For example, I will have more trust in some automatic system that is going to scrape the data and make, according to some parameters, final judgment. I would not be surprised if some people subscribe to that. I think that especially we in this region kind of understand it, at least in Croatia, Slovenia is a little bit better, right? And then the other thing that was mentioned before, and it was funny because we had short discussion on the previous panel that I was listening to. Somebody mentioned something that is very logical and intuitive. Like AI cannot replace human empathy, right, and human emotions, because this is something that is inherent to us.
You can take a look at P.
Yeah, but what I said then, on the other hand, we have research that was published when they compared the answers from the doctors and from the ChatGPT, and the answers from the ChatGPT had more empathy than the doctors.
Exactly.
Right? So from the point of perception of the patients, we could get what we are needing from it. The little bit of the confusion is because we are speaking in AI as an umbrella term, right? Currently, we are speaking about artificial narrow intelligence, which is not definitely on the level of humans, but in the specific segments, it is closing to the human capabilities in different aspects. What is going to happen in 5 or 10 years? Who knows?
Okay, Aco, you are dominating now, and we should give the microphone to the Rajko, Professor Rajko.
Just add two things which are coming again from humanities perspective. The first one is the technology issue again. We are not typically aware of the root of the term technology. It is the ancient Greek term of techne, and techne means art. Nothing less and nothing more than art. So art and technology are the same, basically, in its roots. So if you ever had any experience in art, you know that art is always emotional. So if you have any experience in technology, you know technology is emotional in its essence. So all tools we use are emotionally charged. There is no exception to the rule. You can observe how soldiers are attached to their guns, and you will see what I have in mind at the moment being. So, another issue I have to say is there is another very important, let's say, lexem in our use we forgot about. When we say tool, a tool, that means a thing we use to do something. It is in ancient Greek terminology called organon, and organon is the root of organ. So when we use tools, they are always just extension of our bodies, which means when we are using tools, we use our bodies in a very specific sense. That means all tools are actually parts of our bodies. And artificial intelligence itself is just a tool we use with our bodies and not outside of our bodies. And it will not change in the future. It cannot change. By the way, artificial intelligence itself as a concept and as a mathematical tool is older than me.
Okay, thanks. Okay, then let's move to another topic I have for you, and this is about AI proliferation. So, a lot of companies like Microsoft, of course, OpenAI, and so on, are racing to proliferate as many as possible AI technology, apps, everything in the society, in the public. And the question is this safe? Can we test it? Because, you know, we cannot predict how fast we are going with this technology. We don't know exactly what it's capable of, except maybe Ilya, maybe he knows, but at this very moment. But is this safe to deploy it with our society? Because I will quote from OpenAI blog post. The only way to get to safety is by deploying AI as quickly as possible with society and test it with real people and collecting feedback, of course. So I think this is the question for all of you. So Dona, you can start.
Okay, I'll start with, don't believe everything you hear and see in the media. First of all, OpenAI are lovely, brilliant, emphasis on the word brilliant, not socially aware people who live in Silicon Valley, who are all AI researchers. They are not you, me, our parents, and our friends, okay? They do not have real jobs. Their jobs are to do AI research. They live in labs and deal with data and numbers and things like that. They've not driven adoption for a product in their entire life, okay? Getting your finance team to use AI to do your projection sheet is rocket science. It's actually harder than rocket science. I wish I could do rocket science instead of teaching my finance team AI. They're saying deploying this and then getting feedback. That getting feedback will take the rest of our lives. Also, what they think they have created, right? They're like, oh, this can replace humans. I'm like, to do what, right? Because each one of us is unique, different, special snowflakes. AI is also unique, different, special snowflakes. AI also couldn't create the meeting invite to put on my calendar for me to be in this room, which is why I was late, right? So anyone who's saying, oh, AI is going to replace a human in 5 years, Mustafa Salomon, also is like, which humans? To do what? I just ask more questions. So am I worried that AI is going to take our jobs? Not really, because offshoring was supposed to take our jobs, and low code was supposed to take our jobs, and AI is supposed to take our jobs. I can't wait for our jobs to be gone, right? At this rate, our jobs are never going to be gone. And every iteration of something that comes along every 10 years that's supposed to take our jobs, we get more work. There's more software developers today than there ever has been in the entire world combined. And we're predicting 1 billion software developers will be needed when we have a planet of 10 billion people who all have access to the internet, hopefully, right? Because you're not going to need less tech people, you're going to need more. And this whole like release a thing and test it, cool, but people aren't using it enough, right? And that's the thing. It's the same 1,000 people who use every AI product over and over and write these reports on, oh, here's the benchmarks and tests and studies. We still use ChatGPT exactly the same way we used it a year ago, right? So we live in an extremely small bubble. OpenAI lives in the tiniest bubble you've ever seen in your entire life. So everything you read on their blog is not necessarily reality from 99.99% of people in the world.
Okay, thanks. This was very comforting. Okay. Now, how we do test these AI apps, also these autonomous agents? I know it's not only Microsoft question because there is a lot of open source and you can now build autonomous agents also on open source, which are just 1 year behind. from the cutting edge. So.
Yeah, I mean, testing of AI is not any different from testing of anything else. And again, AI is a huge umbrella term, as it was mentioned. It's not like this one kind of monolith thing that is AI. There's no button where you press buy AI and does everything in your organization. It's a huge collection of very, very small components. Each one of them is tuned perfectly to do one small thing very, very well, right? And you test that small component in the context in which it's supposed to operate. If you have one small component whose entire job is to find the right article for your customer from the catalog of articles that you have, then this is what you test it for. That's it, right? You ask it a million questions. You can literally have another AI to test that AI to make sure that it works. So you can literally use AI to test another AI. This is how AI is actually developed, right? AI is developed by having one AI that is the teacher, who knows the answers, and one AI who is the learner, who learns and evolves to answer the questions correctly. You can use the same approach to test your AI in your small components. So this is essentially how you do it. You need to treat it like any other software component that you have as part of your framework. It's simple as that.
Okay, then maybe you want to add something, Aco, or not? Do you think it's safe to have so many AI apps around?
No, it's another problem of a number of AI apps, right? So we have on one side prediction.
We have on Facebook, we have Snapchat, we have on Slack,
it's not important.
Yeah, why?
The number is not important. It's the approach to the development that is important. So we had almost a year ago this open letter, which was signed by thousands of scientists who said, let's kind of slow it down until we all agree what do we want to achieve. And it was famous at the moment when Elon Musk signed it, but it was immediately clear that it would not be possible to stop the development because everybody is in this circle of first mover advantage. Right? Everybody wants to be first because if they're second, they're not sure what they're going to lose. So the consequence of that is the development which is without almost any guardrails, right? So OpenAI is also just, and Microsoft, with all respect to the Microsoft people here, they're just pouring money into it because they want to develop it and to launch the product as fast as they can with certain risks that they're willing to take. Many people in the field, both ethicists or those who are not, are warning that this is not the safest way necessarily.
Actually, I also find the data about that. Half of them thinks that there is 10% chance or greater that this technology make people go extinct.
Yeah, so which is estimation, right? They might not be right, but the question was like, would you enter a plane for which pilots tell you, look, like there's 50% of pilots tell you there's 10% of chance that it's going to crash? You would probably not, right? But it's not the perfect data, I would agree. From what I see as a problem that unfortunately there is like a gold rush. Everybody is just investing into the development, and then we have people on the other side who are going in other extremes and saying, look, we need to stop it in the way that we should nuke the server sites where the artificial intelligence data is stored, right? So it is then complete madness on the other hand, but I can say that Ilya wants to add.
Let me just add to it that if you all think that AI came into existence when OpenAI opened these doors like 3 years ago, that's not the case. I studied AI in high school, and I'm not 15 years old,
But Ilya, in the meantime, LLMs were invented, and all these fields actually joined in development. So this is the first boost, right?
The only thing that changed with AI is not that it was invented, is that it became more available and more cheaper to use.
Everything started treated as a language. So we treat everything as a language, and also Whisper is invented like to speech-to-text tool, right? And all YouTube videos and podcasts feed now LLMs, so they are getting stronger and more powerful, and they know a lot of things we don't know. And nobody knows what ChatGPT knows.
Speech-to-text, text-to-speech, transformers, all the technology literally existed for almost 30 years. I'm serious. The difference is, like in the 90s, you would have banks and large organizations who could afford to spend millions of dollars on expensive IBM mainframes. They would sit in their basements and they would do all that AI. The difference is that now you have that technology. Yes, it's more advanced. Of course, it's more advanced. It's been 30 years. Is now more available because of the cloud. This in the same way that anything that any
You have
technology that
supercomputers which are worth
you
$1 billion.
You literally can now buy time yourself as a separate person on a quantum computer if you want to, which was, science fiction 10 years ago because of the cloud. So it's not that it's something amazing new. It is, guys, honestly, 90% of it is marketing. As Donna said, the engineers that work in Silicon Valley, they have a bit of a delusions of grandeur, and like maybe 10% of what they promise, maybe it will exist. I know that because I used to be an engineer myself. When you invent something new, you are on the top of the world. You think that you're going to change the world, and you want to change the world, but reality is different, and we can all see how things evolve. We simply are, as a species, as people, and I think the professor can probably comment on that, cannot evolve in the rate at which those researchers promise us. When a researcher comes and tells you next week the society and Earth and everything is going to change and AI is going to control the world, that cannot happen physically. We cannot, as a society, transform this quickly. It's not possible.
Okay, maybe in 5 years. We'll see. Okay. Donna.
So I'll tell you the two things that I'm worried about for real, okay, in this AI verse. And these are two actual things, and you all will resonate. One is deepfakes. Because all we need is a deepfake of some president being like, I declare war on that country, and we have a nuclear war. You know that, right? And there's 6 wars going on right now? And we are all in the middle of all of them, somehow. So that is a real fear. And the best thing we can be doing is being able to identify when a video is a deepfake or a photo is a deepfake or a thing is a deepfake. It is impossible to do right now. Everyone thinks they can do it, they cannot. That, to me, is probably one of the biggest existential crises we have. But this could have been done before also with a really good video editor person. It's just easier for people to do now. You saw the whole Taylor Swift debacle, right? That happened. So deepfakes, to me, are probably the biggest fear. And it is our responsibility to teach everyone in our lives, you can't believe anything you see on the internet for as long as you live, from now until the end of time. That is just true. The second thing I worry about is COBOL. You'll resonate. Because COBOL backs up 95% of the financial transactions on the planet. So every ATM swipe, every time you take out money from the bank, is written in COBOL in the Eisenhower era. Who knows COBOL? Other than, oh shit, there's a lot of hands in this room. What? This is the most COBOL hands I've ever seen. So, I know. Y'all going to be able to command $1 million salaries from fixing financial transactions. And here's the problem. Instead of translating COBOL into Java or C++ or C or Python, I don't care. We're spending all our time messing around with making AI art. Okay? That's what we're spending our time doing. We have this powerful technology. We can convert. From COBOL, we have bajillion lines of code into some modern language that we can maintain. But instead of doing that, we're spending it making AI art. So I think, not unless we do it, right? Not unless we do it. We have to train a model on COBOL to actually do this. So to me, these are the two existential crises that are real problems that I see that I wish we would work on more.
Yeah, thank you very much for these warnings. I'm old enough even to remember assembly as the primary, let's say, communication to machines. So what I have in mind to say as anthropologist is humanity has a very long history. I don't know with which part of it I should start. But in general, we have to understand that humanity itself is the result of both cultural and biological evolution and revolutions, of course. Evolution was hand in hand going on establishing new technologies and new ways of life. New ways of life and new technologies when needed. And they both are interrelated into the product we are. So humanity as we know it today, or as we are facing it on Earth today, is no older than 300,000 years. But hominins before humanity were split from apes, or closest relatives in biological sense, 5 to 7 million years ago. And there was one technology which was characteristic of this long-term evolution of humanity. It was hand axe. Nobody actually knows in anthropology what these hand axes were used for. These were tools, some evidence would show us that these tools were made simply to show that you can do it, that you are able to do this perfect tool, you know, for cutting stuff by your hand for more than 1.5 million years. That means from 2 million years ago up to 300,000 years ago. And it didn't change. And it didn't change much throughout this history. Maybe it was just a tool for fun, for making a proof that you can make it. And maybe we are somehow forgetting that human beings are mostly designed to have fun, to have a good time in their life, and they are ludic in essence. So the first use of all these tools we are speaking about, or let's say side way of using of digital technologies, has always been games. And in these games, artificial intelligence proved to be effective initially with chess and these other games we are around. But chess is still fun for human beings, although we know that technology is better in the moves. The same will remain with literature, the same will remain with music. Just to say that I, as a musician improviser, occasionally I improvise, I know that I will have absolutely no problem to play with artificial intelligence improvising with me. I don't care about the source, and it is nothing special actually. So all human activities you can imagine in cognitive way may be replaced by artificial intelligence in the future. And anthropologically speaking, there are plenty of jobs, David Graeber would name them bullshit jobs around, we have to get rid of as soon as possible. And if we have tools, I mean artificial tools, to get rid of them, so much better. So at least in some aspects we should be optimistic. But there is another aspect we can't be optimistic too much. I will give you a quote for this. Men make their own history, but they do not make it as they please, is one of the most famous quotes written in history of social sciences. It means, of course, we can have ideas how to use tools, but existing relations or relationship among human beings prevent us of using the way how we please. It is history that is a bit stronger than our individual wish is, and of course we developed artificial intelligence in the times of the development of late capitalism, and as long as it is a result of late capitalism, it has to follow its rules, and it will follow its rules. When and how things, or let's say rules, will change, we shall see. But let's be optimistic about this. So society is something we have to consider as the only possible environment in which we will use these tools.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So we already talked about some common risks, as Dona said, about deepfakes and everything, that internet will be flooded with bots, and and we will not be able to see that actually we are hacked, because this technology will know what we are thinking, what we are feeling. And okay, this is common risks, because we should end it soon. I just wanted to say, and the last question was what we can do about this. But before that, I just want to say, because I'm very curious, Microsoft people, I would really like to ask you, what is the next step which Microsoft will take, and what is the end goal of Microsoft? Because do more with less. We see that now this is in full expansion, like do more with less. And what is the end goal for Microsoft and corporations like Microsoft?
So the goal of corporations is to make lots and lots and lots of money. That is literally the goal. Their job is not to move humanity forward. It's not to solve hunger, climate, whatever. You have one job as the CEO of a public company, which is to make a shit ton of money, okay? That is your job. If you don't do that job, you will be fired. By Wall Street, right? It's just how it works, or whoever, stock market investors, etc. That is your job. This is a good way to make lots of money for Microsoft. That is why Microsoft is doing it. Microsoft also has been known to go put technology into the hands of lots of people. They did that with PCs, Windows, cloud computing, etc. This is yet another way to do that. But the end goal of Microsoft continues to be the same goal it was since 1980, which was make a lot of money.
Okay. Honest answer. But do more with less. Do more with less. I think it maybe increase these anomalies we already have in our society, like inequity and other stuff we are dealing with.
Like,
so how? Or okay, this is like Dona said. This is the fact. But what we can do about all of that? What we can do? Not just about artificial intelligence technology, but in general, what we can do to make things better.
Yeah, as Dona said, we live, well, not all of us, but most of us live in some form of capitalism. And yes, businesses, their job is to make money, of course. But also the mission statement of Microsoft, literally, I think you all know it, but in short, is empower everyone to achieve more and do more. How does that actually manifest? How does that actually manifest? Depends on the era we are in. It used to be achieving more, giving everyone access to a computer, then giving everyone access to the internet, then giving everyone access to knowledge through AI, and so on and so on. I don't know, and no one knows, including Mustafa Suleiman, what's going to happen in the next five years. What we can do as a society, and what we should do as a society, is to come up with regulation, write to your representative or whatever, of how to regulate this market, those companies, because I can tell you, look, I'm not going to speak for Satya or whatever, let's put it this way, this is my personal opinion. Corporations, contrary to popular belief, love it when there is regulation, because they know within which area they can operate, and they can then all play on the same playing field. If the world government, the UN, comes out and says, this is the limits of AI, or this is how AI is supposed to operate in certain spaces, then that's it. That's a binding agreement, and no one, including OpenAI or Microsoft, can go beyond that. This is the difference between how companies operate and how society should take the responsibility to put limits on how companies operate in general. When the internet first came out, there was this famous hacker, Kevin Mitnick. At the dawn of the internet, in the end of the 90s, he spent 10 years in solitary confinement because the judge was convinced that Kevin Mitnick can use the phone to whistle the nuclear launch codes and launch. Yeah, it sounds funny, but they actually believed it, and he spent 10 years in solitary confinement without a phone because they thought that he can use the phone with the internet to launch ballistic missiles. And this is the same argument that we are discussing now today. AI in 5 years, kind of in the Matrix. It didn't happen then, it's not going to happen now, because we all like to criticize our politicians, but they're not entirely insane.
Mark his words, okay?
I'll say something about regulations. Everyone is like, we need regulations, we need regulations. That's real hard to do. Here's why. Because say we in the US put a regulation in that says no more AI development past GPT-5, it's the end. China does not care about our regulations. Their product, aka TikTok, has taken over the global planet, right? So unless the entire world agrees on regulations, like the nuclear codes they all agreed on that they didn't hold up, it's very, very hard to get 8 billion people to agree on something. So that's the thing. Whenever anyone starts up on how come there's no regulations in the US, I'm like, I do not know. I don't deal with regulations. But AI is a human problem. What we have is a human problem, not a technical problem. And we're trying to apply technology to solve a human problem, which, good or bad, right? You're saying biased, less biased. But regulations are not going to be the end-all, be-all of it, because getting 195 countries to agree on something is pretty dang hard.
Yeah, so in short, we are doomed. Yeah, okay. So I think that we should now finish. Maybe, I don't know, Do you want to hear some more or to finish? We are all good. Maybe to add something, Professor, you want to add something? And you also.
I came across one very interesting quote at X platform, which goes like this: the rebranding of linear algebra as artificial intelligence may be the most successful marketing campaign of all time.
Maybe also you want to add something because you didn't speak.
Yeah, but maybe. Yeah, maybe just one expectation. I mean, I'm not sure if it's going to be utopian or dystopian future, but I think that many of us should prepare for the society where, in best case scenario, we will not have to work. So then we will have to rethink our identities, right? Because if future AI agents took some percentage or big percentage of our jobs, some of the positions might be lost. I think it's a little bit of the problem is that we're always comparing what was happening in the past, but some things cannot be comparable to those new things that are happening and that are happening much faster. And I agree that we are not evolving. We will not be able to evolve. So just be prepared that maybe we will have to work on ourselves to rethink what is going to be our purpose in some kind of future society. Of course, in that case, that we are not destroyed by some kind of AI error. Yeah, so I would finish with that.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
And to that, it's happy hour time, everyone. Go enjoy each other's company because that's what we're doing. Thank you.
Thanks.